Collaboration, how can you work with others to deliver something together that is greater than the sum of your parts by thinking about the relative value that each one of you brings? Hi, and welcome to Helping You Perform. I'm your host, Paul Teasdale. Over a career working with high-performing teams from across the globe, including 7 years working with Formula One team McLaren, I've learned a lot about what it takes to drive results. In this weekly podcast series, I'm going to be bringing you tips, tricks, and insights from the world of Formula One that you can apply to your organisation for your high performance. Enjoy. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Helping You Perform, where I bring my tips, tricks, insights and stories from the world of Formula One and other high-performing teams and help accelerate your performance. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode 53, which was all about legacy. What can you do to build your legacy? What do you want that to be, and how can you do that? In this week's episode 54, I wanted to talk about collaboration and spin-offs and different ways in which you can take your existing business and do something similar but slightly different, maybe doing that with other people and using the shared value that you can both get for that. Now, I talked a little bit in episode 38 about inspirational and innovative partnerships, but maybe this is something slightly different. It's how do you work with others to deliver? And that's really what collaboration is all about. It's how do people work together for a shared goal so that they can actually produce something that is better than the sum of their parts. And there's a couple of examples I want to talk about from the world of McLaren, but also, I'm going on a personal collaboration journey at the moment. I've worked with some amazing people in my time. I'm going this amazing bit of collaboration with my good friend, Jimmy Burrows, and we're working together on something where we can both bring a different view of what we believe is a common shared goal and something that's going to be excellent. But we can both bring different elements of value to that. And by doing that together, we're hoping to build something that is better than the sum of the parts that we both have, even though that in itself could be awesome. So let's talk about a couple of examples from the world of McLaren. Now, the first one in terms of collaborations was how did McLaren think about working with other organizations such that the two brought together their different elements of value. And when I first joined McLaren, there was a relationship with KPMG, one of the big four, and that changed over time to be a relationship with Deloitte. But ultimately, it was similar sort of things, slightly different angle in terms of what we were after. But what those collaborations brought was each party had something that the other party didn't. Now, when it came to those KPMG and Deloitte, those big players, what they were bringing was scale. They were bringing access to senior level clients. They had access to a whole range of clients that a small establishment like McLaren didn't necessarily have. But what McLaren were bringing was something wholly different to what those big players had. We had something that was agile, something that was innovative, and something that was external and disruptive in its thinking. And so when you start to compare the two side by side, you see a small organization and a large organization. You say, how can these things collaborate together to create something great? Well, it's by truly understanding the value and the relative value that each of you can bring. Because collaboration is not about I'm a service sort of interaction. It's not a commodity exchange. It's not saying I'm going to give you £100 and I want £100 worth of service. You are saying you provide a gap that I can't provide, and I can provide a service that you can't provide. But together we can build this up into something that is absolutely brilliant and better and greater than the sum of our parts. So think about that for yourselves. What are the opportunities out there to collaborate with others? Even if you're a solopreneur, there are opportunities out there to work with other solopreneurs, maybe work with bigger organizations so that you can take your skill set and collaborate with those people to build something together that offers something bigger and better than what each of you could do by yourselves. And I've had a lot of amazing conversations with a group of solopreneurs headed by the great Faris Aranki, who's brought us all together. And we've talked about this a lot of times, and we've seen some great examples of it, where we've got one or two or even three or four solopreneurs who individually can provide a certain service, but together can provide a whole offering that no individual could bring together by themselves. And so what are the opportunities in your space, in your team, in your organization, where you could collaborate with different parties? And I've seen some great examples of collaboration that are intra-company. So you've got different departments. I've recently worked with an amazing organization where the sales department and the purchasing department and the logistics department are working together and collaborating in new ways so that they are all bringing together value that each one of them couldn't bring. And it's by coming together and viewing what's the value that we can add together to this business. It changes the dynamic of what value can this department bring. And I think that's a really important thing, is once you start asking the value you can provide together versus the value that you can provide as an individual or as an individual team or department, then you start to really lift your game and find ways to work together and collaborate with people to deliver something that is greater than the sum of those parts. I also mentioned the word spin-offs as well. There are opportunities to take what you do at the moment and spin that off in a different direction. And this is the classic example that I came into at McLaren was McLaren Applied Technologies. More recently, this is McLaren Applied. And that whole concept was saying, right, we have an organization here that is, does a racing program, but we also have an automotive side of it. And those two things are great. And when they succeed, they're amazing. But actually, we're trying to mitigate some risk here, because particularly in the racing side of it, when you're not winning on the track, you're not getting the sponsorship money, you're not getting the winner's money. Therefore, it starts to get into a spiral where you can't particularly do well, and you struggle to do well, and you end up in a sort of disruptive and poor cycle where you're getting worse and worse, because the worse you get, the less money you get, the less you can invest, etc. So what McLaren came up with was this idea of spinning off some of their services so that they could provide a revenue stream even when, and actually for those moments when the racing team wasn't doing so well. And that was providing services and expertise based on what they'd learned over the years to organizations, and ultimately partnering and collaborating with the likes of KPMG and Deloitte to enable that revenue to come in when revenue wasn't coming in through the racing channel. So that's another thing to think about this week for yourselves is, are there different ways, even as a solopreneur, if my offering is as a speaker, if my offering is as a facilitator, what are the spin-off things that I can do that perhaps give me opportunities for revenue and for income in those times when the speaking opportunities or the facilitating opportunities aren't quite coming in, or the market dries up, or something happens where I can't quite get the work in that space? Do I have something as a bit of a counterbalance to allow me to mitigate the risk and to work with others in new and innovative ways? So that's this week's theme, collaboration. How can you work with others to deliver something together that is greater than the sum of your parts, by thinking about the relative value that each one of you brings? As always, I'd love to have a conversation with you, see where this is taking you, see where the thought process is going with you and your teams and your organizations. Visit me at paulteasdale.co.uk, set up that free 30 minutes. Let's have a chat, see where it goes, and hopefully we might collaborate in future. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Helping You Perform podcast. If you found value in this episode, please take a moment to like, share, or review the podcast. You can reach out to me at any time either through LinkedIn or through my website at www.paulteasdale.co.uk. I look forward to speaking to you in the next episode.